I had to put it on right. I took it off for the last part of the part 14 that I did. And for those of you who are watching or not watching the last one I did, there definitely was, I already did 15, 16, 17, and 18. I just barely started the step 18 though when I was last on. And that I'm curious to see myself at some point when I go back and watch my own videos, because I typically don't. Um, what the transition will look like from when I was trying so hard to stay on my journey and keep going while I was going through my back stuff, and to jump to now, which I think part of the reason I was excited to get into step 19, it's weird to say, but is this hat, because it's something that I've been practicing a lot of the year, and that I've been guiding people that come to me into doing. It's like step one, somebody comes to me, one of my main questions is, how are you nourishing your inner child? Right? And that's what I think about when I think about the sun. And I also think about all the lessons that come before the sun, and what the sun card is to me, especially in terms of the journey, the path of the Empress, is getting to that place where you are in, not just in full recognition of your inner child, your little divine feminine, that little squish in you, but you love to let that part of you out in whatever way she comes out. She might be a rough and tumble tomboy. She might be a sweet, squishy fairy type. She might be a princess. She might be a totally like dainty feminine carpenter who smokes. I don't know, like, what and that when I talk about like your inner child, like it's all things. It's kind of getting to me, this the lesson in the sun card, in that, like, here comes the sun, is when we allow, was it this little light of mine, to shine on all aspects of ourselves, the big adult us and the inner child little us. And then we start to kind of have this alchemy happen where we get to a point to where they start to integrate with each other. They're still separate in there a little bit, but they start to integrate, and you become a whole person rather than a fragmented person that you've been. Because I mean, just over the last couple hundred years, we humans have not been very nice to each other, and children in particular, we have been extra cruel to, either because it was the whole they're seen and not heard thing, or they're a burden, or we have to because our species won't survive, and then going through all these mix match things to where, well, children have the problems that children have to be categorized and spectrumed, and like all these different things. Like, we really separate ourselves as kids. And you know what's funny is, it's very, well, it's not funny, it's an interesting perspective to see that effectively that's the same thing we kind of do to ourselves in terms of separating from non-physical, from spirit, from source, in order to come down and have the human experience. We want to be able to be to feel individual, to feel separate from all that is, so that we don't know everything, so we can be surprised, so we can play, so that we can create and destroy and do all those things. And my opinion of it is typically that, like, the part of that journey is also coming back to the awareness that we are a part of all things, and then playing with that in a whole different way, because we created these egos to have in there that like continually remind us how separate we feel in these vessels, in these bodies, in this time and date and space, and all the things. And it's an interesting thing to sit back and look at that. But for me, like, I know I've already talked about it in many of the further steps, but when you get to this step and it really feels like it resonates with you, which can be in any order. I've always said that you don't have to watch these videos in a particular order. If they pop up in your feed and it's like a video that's way back or way forward from whatever step you were last watching, or if you haven't watched any steps yet, like, go for what calls to you, because you might start in a different space. And because I'm aligning these with the tarot cards, like, you're not always going to go from Well, I would say you could either go from the fool to the world, or you could go from the magician to the fool, whatever order you feel like it goes better in. Um, or you could say that you are the fool and you go from the magician to the world. There's many different practices, whatever one feels called to you. We oftentimes don't go through that journey just like A to B. Like you might get to the hanged man and stay there for a really long time, or you might get to the hanged man and go back to the magician and keep doing stuff until you learn the new perspective that you want. Or you might get to the tower and then go back to the hanged man, or you might like go through these different things. You might get to the judgment card and then keep repeating a cycle because there was some sort of thing about maturity in there that you needed to deal with, or some karma, and then you get to the world card and then you come over. And so also, if you feel called to rewatch a video, maybe there's something that I said in it that didn't quite catch the last time that might catch this time. And the really cool thing is, when you get to this step, when you get to card number 19, the sun, and you're in the energy, you can feel the lightness of it, you can feel the radiance of it. Think about it, it's the sun card, right? There's a big sun on there, and the child in it is naked, which it's an intentional vulnerability. We don't need the shield. We're riding on a unicorn where we got some sunflowers radiating behind us. It's all about the lightness, the delightness, the deliciousness of enjoying life. And you're only a few cards away from the world, which means another up level, another upgrade. And I feel like to get to that step, whether you're more aligned with the first step one video, or you're ahead, is when you get here to stop and look at how are you indulging your inner child in healthy ways. And likewise, look at the other stuff too. Like, are you spoiling your inner child? Because we can do that, and a lot of humans do that. Or are you letting your inner child run the show? Are you letting little you decide everything because when you were 4 or 8 or 10, you had a bad experience with your parents, or with a friend or something like that? Are you basing your current adult experiences on that experience? Because if you are, you're letting your inner you control what you're doing in a not great way. And you might want to have a talk with them. And likewise, and I'm not saying everybody has to love children, but if you have a hard time around children, if you are extremely triggered by them or frustrated, whether your own children or other children, or every time you're around children, they seem to violate your boundaries or be really loud, or there's just something about it. Look into where within you are not, in alignment with your own inner child. If you're not able to hold space for the innocence of children and everything that they do, doesn't mean you always have to be happy with them. Like, it's important that we don't just show kids like this one side of us that's always pretending to be happy, or even that we're just only around them when we're happy. Like, and if you do things in that way, look at why. Was it how your parents did that with you? Was that how adults around you were? Or was there, like, examine those experiences? Because you know when you get to places in your life where step 19 is going to resonate, that's when you really want to have that down. When you recognize where you base your adulthood experiences on not happy childhood experiences, and you alchemize those and turn, you start to look for how you can let the positive experiences you had as a kid color what you do rather than the negative ones. And you also you don't compartmentalize and just completely ignore the negative ones. Instead, you alchemize those into recognizing you're an adult. Yay, you're an adult, and you get to decide who you're going to play with and who you're not going to play with. And nobody's going to, well, most time, nobody's going to beat you up for saying that it's wrong to not want to play with them, or to tell them that they hurt you. And if they do, you don't have to hang out with them anymore. You can walk away from them. There's not this big giant group in society that's going to come down and be like, hey, you can't do that. And then you can get into the bigger, wider issues of the details of things like that. But I feel like the sun card typically does not, like in terms of like bigger issues going on in the world, the ones that typically keep us locked in the runner chaser vibe, not just with our twins, but with like hot topic issues in society, like we get too focused on the threats and the we get reactionary to everything going on around us, and in some ways that's intentional. Like people keep us in that state because we're not productive in that state, and we actually just manifest the very things we're afraid of. So to alchemize that, you do stuff like you take the sun and you radiate that light energy within you all around you, and you don't worry about rendezvousing with negative experiences. You know, there's a reason it's a child on a unicorn in this like very almost fantasy type situation, but it's not. You don't see any like elves. It's not overly fanciful because it's not about creating something that it's so weird to say this. It's not about creating something that doesn't exist, but we do that all the time. It's not about taking. It's not about deception. You know, the nudity in the card is about the release of all that stuff. You don't need the rose-colored glasses. You don't need to make it something that is unbelievable. It's something that's believable for you. And just focus on rendezvousing with the people and the places and the activities and the things that bring you delight. Like we often, starting from childhood, get trained to get to a state to where any sort of self-pleasure is bad. Anything that you like to do is bad because you should be doing for somebody else, or you should be taking care of an important chore, or you should be doing that. Yes, we do need to do those things, but human beings are not the kind of creatures that do well with no play. We're really not. You can look at any angle you want, whether mystical or psychological or physiological, whatever way you want to look at it. We do not do well if we don't have our playtime. So, in this step A, here comes the sun, it's to get yourself to that state. If you feel like you're missing some pieces, you could go check out the other steps that I've created up to this point. You could go listen to other people about it. You can just sit and chill and think about it yourself. Whatever way works for you. Get to the state to where you're really like you regularly have playtime with your inner child, that you're able to, in a way, I mean, you don't have to wear silly hats like me. Maybe what you like is having really pretty shirts or coats or sunglasses or something, but like have it be to where you can be comfortable having the new, like, what's the word, I want to say the alchemized version of you, where you are both your inner child and your inner adult, and they're outer in the world and they are easily expressed, or you don't care if they're not easily expressed. You know that somebody will get it, and the divine timing will work for it, and everything will be fun. I'm going to end the video here, partially because I have an appointment, and also because it just feels like a good ending place. So I hope that you enjoyed this first step in step 19, and I will see you in future videos.